Now, something that I'm surprised is finally happening is Ash is leaving the Pokemon anime, or so it seems. After 25 years of adventuring through 8 mainline continents where the games take place, and I think as many movies as the adventure's been going on, or so it feels, our boy is retiring. What that actually means, we can't say until the final chapter series starts running and finishes later in January, but we'll see how it goes. Now, we could speculate on many things. But I want to put my tinfoil hat on and go over my idea for why Gen 9 was designed for Ash to retire from the anime. It's no secret that as time goes on, a lot of series will introduce new side characters. Sometimes new additions to grow the main cast at later parts in the story. This is pretty common to happen in video games, sometimes TV series as well as movies. It's nothing new. However, there are a few series that managed to move along for literal decades with the same main cast. Pokemon has always changed up the secondary cast members beforehand, or heroes, as the old narrator would call them. Shout out if you're that old to know or remember. First, Brock was replaced with Tracy, only to have Brock come back. Then we replaced Misty with May and her younger brother Max. Then Gen 4 came along, we got Dawn, Gen 5 with Iris, so on and so forth. Ash has always been at the center of these stories, but the main cast has always been shaken up to some degree. Sometimes you'll have old characters come back in a cameo, or short filler arcs, just because they could. However, after so long, I think it's pretty obvious that Pokemon's probably been fighting with the best way to send off Ash as the protagonist of the anime. Gen 6 was a game that a lot of people find forgettable, claim that it was super easy, or, like me, never had a 3DS, so we never got to play it. What Gen 6 did have going for it, though, was the anime. Oh my goodness. I stopped watching Pokemon during the Diamond and Pearl arcs, but everybody and their wine ants were telling me about how hype the X and Y anime was, or how powerful Ash was. It had gotten to the point that everyone thought that Ash was going to have a good chance at winning the tournament, claiming he would be replaced after reaching his height in that series. All to lose to Elaine, and everyone seemed crushed by that. Then came Gen 7, a colorful adventure with a controversial anime that I did start watching. I had heard so much about how good the X and Y anime was, so I figured I could dip back in with the new series, only to feel conflicted about the Sun and Moon series. I watched a handful of episodes when it first came out. I got to like episode 20 or so, but I couldn't jive with the art style all that much. And yes, art style isn't everything in a TV series or an animation, but if it wasn't for Team Rocket in those first few episodes, I would have been bored to death with the series. I couldn't get behind it. But Ash went to school, and in the same series, that he went to a Pokemon school, of which have been in the mainline game since Generation 1 and were prominent in some of the generations at the beginning of the game, he won the championship for that region. But with how controversial the new series felt, and how it was received, it honestly felt like this would have been the end for Ash's story. He won a league tournament. However, maybe people would complain that the only league Ash won was the one where they just made it and he was the most experienced battler in the entire region. Well then, what could he do next? Well, how about making him a world champion? Send him out with a bang. Introducing Generation 8, Sword and Shield. Now, it's no secret that Gen 8 was polarizing. There was a lot of valid criticisms that were thrown at the game for both pacing, story, gameplay, and overall world design. But one thing that, from what I could tell, that the fanbase loved was the style for the gyms being treated more like a sporting event, the hype gym theme music, and the idea of champion tournaments occurring in this region every year with trainers from around the world. The gyms felt less like private sparring sessions and felt like it was a sport, validating calling the organization the Pokemon League. So as controversial as the game was, the anime wasn't as polarizing, but had its own fair share of opinions. Alongside Ash, we were going to have another protagonist as equally important as Ash in the shape of Go. Go was controversial among fans with how he treated his Pokemon, especially in the beginning, but also how easy Pokemon catching seemed to be for him. I mean, dude caught a Suicune pretty early, and that shit normally takes like 30 hours or so in Gen 2 games. But with a new lead sharing the spotlight with Ash, we got to see how audiences reacted to Ash not being the central focus of the plot. This had been done to smaller degrees with Pokemon and side characters having one episode or so arcs dedicated to them from time to time, but not nearly to the degree that Go was given. So how do we make sure Ash doesn't return in the next generation? Well, let's make a region the writers can't easily shoehorn him into. Enter the Paldea region, with a school that is a preschool as much as it is a university, with students of all ages studying there. This region isn't all that evenly settled, with major cities feeling like they pop up from place to place, no central infrastructure or established road systems behind dirt paths to guide everyone from place to place. But the new region revolves around two areas, Area Zero and Mesa Goza, with the Academy. Why make Ash go to school again if you can have one, or no, maybe two new trainers go to this school, learn about Pokemon, and then set off on their own journeys? Maybe have them be inspired by a young kid who became champion at the age of 10, technically 11, but I'll talk about that later, and beat people like Lance the Dragon Tamer from Kanto, Cynthia from Sinnoh, or Leon from Galar. Have it be the biggest send-off that we can manage, and then end his arc there? I'm not saying the past few generations were made to find a way to send off Ash from the anime, but with this nice tinfoil fedora that I did steal from a Redditor, and ugh, I am implying that maybe the writers' room from the past few generations may have been trying to get a break and find a new face for the series. Pokemon has been big for both boys and girls. The only mainline game that didn't allow you to pick between boy and girl was literally the original Gen 1 games. Even in the anime, we'd never gone long without a female lead in the main group with Ash. Not to mention how excited people have been for the other Pokemon shorts and series that have been made with literally anyone but Ash getting as much love and attention as the main series. Sometimes they got more love at times, debatably. So maybe the writers were testing the waters to see if they would be interested, if we would be interested in seeing Pokemon from someone else's eyes. Now, my personal opinion, I've been interested in the idea of Ash leaving the series or growing up. I liked watching the series as a kid, but I also mentioned that I stopped watching after the Diamond and Pearl series, and that it's because, even as a 10-year-old, I was tired of Ash battling like a dweeb. Let's be real. In Generation 1, we all let it slide when he didn't know type matchups all that well, and somehow beat a Rhydon with a Pikachu. But after a few seasons, continents, and leagues, he even won the Orange Isle Leagues, but people forget that arc, he was an accomplished trainer. He wasn't a complete pushover to make it to league challenges and get all the gym badges. It's happened and become more apparent in the newer games with Scarlet and Violet, where Geeta and the other Elite Four members literally tell you that most league challengers give up at certain gyms and don't collect after a certain point. But most people lead normal lives, and it was always hinted at that in the games and in the past, not everybody got all 8 gym badges. But to be fair, most people and trainers in the Pokemon world only have a handful of Pokemon at best, just because they don't have a professor watching over all of them, and so responsibly, you only take care of the pets that you can afford to keep around. Somebody who gets, let's say, 50 cats and then can't take care of all of them will be considered negligent. Well, I think the same could definitely be said for Pokemon. So, with that being the case, most people only have a handful. 1, 2, 3, maybe more if they're a professional trainer to some capacity. But besides that, most people have like the one partner. So with the fact that Ash did have all of the gym badges and went through a battle frontier, puts him really high on a pedestal compared to the average trainer. So how does he still not know type matchups at this point? It was cute when he was a new trainer, but even as a kid and watching him go from Johto to Sinnoh, it always bothered me to see him mess up his type matchups this badly. I really wanted him to either grow and mature with us so that I felt like he really was growing as a trainer, or for him to get replaced. With a new character, the audience would be a lot more forgiving if they were watching new trainers learn to become trainers, maybe even at a Pokemon school, that were unfamiliar with the type matchups. Not only that, but then the newer fans and younger kids could also have someone to learn the type matchups with, so that they wouldn't feel alone or dumb for not knowing type matchups like us old fans and game players are. Heck, I know Pokemon fans older than me who don't have all the type matchups memorized like I do. They aren't anything different or lesser fans for not having memorized a table of 18 fantasy elements and know how each one hurts the other. But this is a kid series and the younger audience needs to be able to learn these type matchups too, most preferably somebody in the anime being an idiot. So yes, as much as I did rag on the writing for Ash, I've also mentioned why he was an idiot, and it's just because they need to make sure that somebody can be dumb so that the kids can learn the type matchups. There's nothing wrong with that. But with older fans who've been watching the series for longer than I've even been alive, I can also feel the frustration of Ash still being dumb, even though he's accomplished a lot for one random kid in this world. But with the side series showing that Pokemon can make a fun story with almost anyone from the franchise, I'm excited to see how they start off this new story with the 2 kids from Paldea, and how maybe they grow into trainers and eventually maybe even rival Ash, like a Gold versus Red showdown after a few seasons. At least, that's what I hope. Oh, hey, you're still around? Oh yeah, remember when I said Ash was technically 11? Well, in a Pokemon short before a movie, Ash celebrates a 1-year anniversary traveling with Pikachu. Ash got Pikachu on his 10th birthday. So if you don't believe me, then blame the 4Kids dub for this clip.
Don't you know what today is, Pikachu? This is the day we first met. The day we first became friends. I think that's pretty special, don't you?
Now, since this is part of a short that played before a movie, maybe this was never canon. But because I saw this as a kid, I always assumed Ash was 11 after this point, until the series restated that he was 10 and from Pallet Town. But anyways, that's enough this tinfoil hat. Ugh. I'm a degenerate, no one asked me, and I hope you all have a good day.